there, dreamers, and welcome to another weekly lesson. My name is Gentry, and every week you find me here helping you bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And today is for you ladies. I'm a single ladies. Actually, this is not for the single ladies. This is not for the single ladies. It might be for the husbands, but it is surely for all my moms out there. How many of us would say the juggle is real? And when I say that, if you're a mom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And quite honestly, the juggle is real. The struggle is real. It's all real. And it's messy. And the in-between on how we're doing all the things can be complicated, overwhelming, lonely, a lot, and probably a multitude of other words. And yet, one of the greatest things I hear from women out there, especially the moms, is, you know what, I just need to put my dreams on the shelf, raise my kids, and then I'll start pursuing my dreams. And today we kind of wanted to flip that on its head. You know me, I believe that our children don't need us as moms putting our dreams on the shelf. We actually need to be moms who are on fire about the things that God has asked us to do so that they can have an example of what this life might look like. But let's be honest. It's messy and it's for real. So today, I'm not just going to have this conversation by myself. I'm actually bringing back a friend of mine who was in my wedding. Now, I've also not seen her in person in over a decade. But you know what? When you're in someone's wedding, you can call on them and go, hey, you want to talk real talk in front of the whole world? And you pick up right from where you left off. And so today we are talking about how the juggle is real and how you can actually build an impact as a mom and an entrepreneur. And this woman that I'm bringing on today is someone who I have admired since I was 18 years old. She is someone who I have watched my life with all the jaggedy edges, and I've seen her be steadfast. I've seen her put one foot in front of the other. I have seen her do the hard really well. And even from afar, I have noticed that she has been a beacon of light in an industry that needs this. This woman is also not building one brand. She's building multiple brands with close to over 100,000 followers, 3 children at home, being part of those followers, and the belief that a for-profit business actually has the ability to create and support financial resources for the world around them. Their businesses have donated thousands and thousands of dollars to those in need. Help me in welcoming Kelli Larson. My bridesmaid.
Wow, that was such an incredible intro. Can you just intro me in life always? That's so good.
I don't know, brought tears to my eyes. All of a sudden, like my life that
Made me a little emotional.
30 years ago, like flashed before my eyes, and we were living in LA again. Do you remember?
Well, I love it.
Here was the beauty. Here's also what you guys need to know. I'm kidding, not kidding. When I was 19 years old, I moved to LA and my life fell apart and Kelli's blossomed. So I went like this way and she went like that way.
I don't know if I blossomed in those years. That wasn't my blossoming, that's for sure.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. You guys, we're going to talk about all the things with Kelli today. But Kelli, will you first and foremost just tell us a little bit about your brands and segue into your family, right? So like talk to us about your entrepreneur journey, what you're building, what you're creating, any cool things that we need to know, and then segue into just a little bit about your family so we have some context.
Cool. Well, I've been an artist and creative for as long as I can remember. Art and fashion kind of has always been my passion. When Julie and I met, I was going to school at FITM, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise in LA. We lived together, and I did that for 2 years. And so growing up, my dad owned a silk screen company. He started a few brands. So when I was in high school, I was kind of introduced to this whole world of fashion and graphic design and all of that. And one of the brands he started, I really loved, and I realized, oh, this is like something I feel like I could do, or, you know, learn more about, which is why I went to school for it. And then right after school, actually during school, I would travel back and forth from LA home, and I was working for him for that brand. So I worked with my dad for about 8 years doing merchandising, graphic design in the action sports industry, and at the same time was cultivating my own style as an artist. I fell in love with illustration and watercolor, and I started kind of a side hobby of being a freelance artist for various clients. So I kind of did that. That was like my side hustle because I just was so passionate about it. I did custom illustrations and custom paintings. I did everything from wedding invitations to logo design. And then when I got married in 2009, and had my daughter to Sam, his name is Sam, and I had my daughter Rylee when in 2011, and that was kind of when, at that time, I was like, I feel like I want to be home with her, and so I stopped working full time with my dad and decided to kind of enter the world of freelance design. And luckily, I had started a blog and an Instagram, and kind of was growing a following with what I was already creating at the time that I had, was working for my dad. And so I had this like following of people already. So I felt like I had this client base. And then from there, for the next 2 years, I just did that. So I worked with, Papyrus and Hallmark and Crate and Barrel and some of these bigger brands on all these different licensing projects, and then also just, word of mouth clients. So that was pretty cool to realize, oh, my art and what I do and what I'm passionate about can be my job. And at the time I was a new mom, I thought this would kind of just be a small thing. But then
which is so funny, you guys. Let's just take a couple of detours. Like here's the, like, I love what we got. I just think it would be a side thing and a side gig, and now here we are years later, and it's not.
So it's funny how that works. Yeah.
So did you at that time, like because one of the things I hear the most, Kelli, is that people don't actually see they don't see themselves as creatives, right? Unless they're like really artistic or creative. Like they almost just kind of bow out of this idea that they even have an art to bring to the world. So I'd kind of like to hear your thought on what art and creativity means to you. But then I also want to hear what you would say to the moms specifically, or the women specifically, who don't see the impact of their art, right? Like, especially if they're not where you are today, to where you're like, oh man, like you could really build a business and a brand out of this. Like, what would you say to the person who, number one, doesn't see themselves as creative, and then number two, to the woman who is downplaying the art that she does do?
So I think what I realize a lot in just talking to like younger girls and stuff is, I feel like so much of the world is like judging you and like critiquing you, but like I think it starts with a foundation of just having confidence in your own abilities and confidence in what you've been called to pursue. I think it's a lot harder in this day and age, like with everything being, social media the way it is, and the internet and all that, to downplay or to second guess kind of your passions or your giftings. But I've always said, if you're passionate about it and you think what you're creating is of value and of worth, like there's gonna be people out there that believe that too. And to continue putting one foot in front of the other and pursuing those things. Yeah, it's easy to say, don't think about the people, what they're saying, or don't think about other people's opinions, because we all feel that. But keep doing those things that bring you joy. I think at the end of the day, God created us as, we're created in his image, and like we're meant to use our hands and be creative. Not even necessarily creative. Not everyone's creative per se, but we're all creative beings. And so whatever it is that you're passionate about, it doesn't have to be art. It could be baking, it could be, raising your children, it could be math, like it could be like literally anything. But to pursue those things that bring you joy and like you feel fulfillment in, because at the end of the day, like I think for me as a mom, like my kids bring me so much joy, but I was also created for other things as well. And I know, and I've actually always known, and that's one thing that I can like stand on, is that I have always known that like creativity and creating and making things beautiful is how I was designed. And like I find so much purpose and joy and fulfillment out of doing those things, alongside my kids, which is, I think, the most beautiful thing, to let them witness their mom finding joy in something that she creates or does, because I want them to have the same thing as they grow up.
Okay, great. So let's keep going down, and then we're going to loop back around to the continuation of your story. But here's another thing. As a mom, okay, so you just painted a picture of what's possible, which is, what would it look like if we actually understood that part of our job is to do the things that bring us joy, because God created us to do those. So we need to be finding joy in doing the things that he's called us to do. So that already paints a picture of, I think, a lot of moms don't actually have that joy. But let's say, what would you say to the mom who feels guilty about doing the things that she's called to do, right? Like, some women I even talk to are like, I love what I do, but then I feel guilty because I'm not with my kids, or if I'm with my kids, I should be here. And if I'm here, I should be there. And so we get ourselves on this like figure 8 of a guilt trip, as opposed to like inviting them into the process of joy and creativity. So can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, I think no matter where you're at, if you're at home or if you're working, you're going to have some sort of guilt, right? I mean, like, yeah, the grass is always greener, right? And I think I've learned that over time. I think it's like, I think starting out, you think you can figure out this perfect balance of, I'm gonna, have this many hours here, and then I'm gonna do this. And you realize at the end of the day, like, that checklist or that expectation you had for yourself did not happen. And day after day after day, that can beat you down, and you can be like, wow, I'm literally failing everywhere. And I think it took me a little while to realize, because that leads to burnout, and you're just never going to be able to do all the things all the time, be everything for everyone. So I realized in my own life, how I like look at this is like, I feel like my life has all these seasons of different, not necessarily crises, but things that need attention, right? Like, so, maybe my daughter's going through something, and I realize, oh, like, more time needs to be spent and focused here, and this is my priority. And then sometimes work is crazy, and we've hired 6 people, and I have to tell my family, hey, like, it's kind of crazy right now. This is going to be a few weeks. This is going to be a month, maybe, that's like, feels different. It feels like a lot. Like, give me some grace in the process. Like, and so I think working my life around, and my priorities around what needs the attention, and being aware of those situations, and then communicating it with my family and those around me. I mean, I have parents who live close by. We have a nanny. I have a very, involved husband. Like, it's not, you can't just stand alone and think that you can do all of these things, because you literally can't. And so leaning on kind of the village that you have, and then having grace along the way, and having focus, I think, on those areas that need attention, because it'll always shift.
Yeah.
I find it's always like this dance, it's never the same thing all the time. Work is a little bit all the time, a lot. then But then sometimes it's a little easier, and sometimes it's a little harder. And then, sometimes other things within my own life, or health or family, need attention. So you shift your focus.
Would you say that you've always had that word grace? It's always those things that we think we know, but we actually don't know, or we know it here, but we don't like know it here. So is grace something that when you go, man, I think you said it, like, what needs my attention most? How do I communicate that to the people around me? And then offer up grace for yourself and others. Love that formula, right? Like, that's actually a formula. Everybody, that's Kelli Larson's formula. But can you talk to us about grace? Has that come natural to you? Have you had to learn it? Because I don't really feel like I have that bone. So asking for myself, not for the peanut gallery. Where'd you get that bone, and how do I find one?
I mean, it definitely came with time for me. I'm like a perfectionist. I work really hard. Like, I want to be the best. That's like my nature. And so best at what I do. I don't know if that came across.
Sure.
want to be the best.
So you're like, by the way, she's really egotistical, which is not true at all. Kelli is one of the most humble humans I've ever met in my life, which is why I can say that. It's
lots
ridiculous.
of people are better than me at a lot of
this
things.
Is a woman, you guys, this is how humble it is. This is a woman who has almost 100,000 followers on Instagram. And I was like, do you want to do a live with me? And she's like, I don't know how to do that. I was like,
I really do that. I did not know how.
I love this woman. She can't do all things. Okay, good. I'm not alone.
You just hire people to do that for you.
Okay, great. So tell us about Grace Bone. Tell us, how did you develop your Grace Bone?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I had a breaking point probably, early on where I came to the realization that like I literally can't do all of this. Like it's impossible for me. I'm exhausted. I'm like at my wit's end. And, I mean, I just came to a point where I was like, I know that this is unsustainable for my life. And I literally God gives you grace. It's like, it came from the Lord. And so it's like, so much grace was on me that I have to give that to myself as well. And like, know that I am an imperfect person and I'm never going to be able to achieve all the things that I think my little human body can achieve and be happy and fulfilled and content in my life. Like, so I felt like there was no other option
So good.
but to be like, it's okay. I need to keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing the best I can. But at the end of the day, if not everything's done, that was my best, and that's okay, and that's good enough.
So good.
And I think especially when you have kids and you have people watching you too, it's like you kind of realize that the important thing is to be present and to like have your eyes open and not be always looking ahead at the next thing and the next thing, because you'll never feel satisfied in that way. And so I think with a business, that's difficult too, because you always want to be looking ahead at the next thing and you want to be achieving more and you want to go to that next step. But just, I mean, I still struggle with this a little bit, but like really, celebrating our successes as they come and like enjoying the kids where they are, instead of being like, okay, what's tomorrow? What's this week? What's that? And you kind of have to do all those things as a mom. You have to have the calendar and you have to, be planning ahead and all that. But I've had to force myself to slow down a little bit and put my phone away, put the emails away, and just kind of be there with them and have time for myself too. Cause I think that's an easy thing for a lot of moms to like just sacrifice their time alone just to get your head straight and to, whatever it is, pray or meditate or take a walk or whatever. So
okay.
I don't know.
Will you, because I have some other questions that I want to ask you, but will you now loop us in on how did you go from one baby hobby, like I really love this, and it's starting to get legs, right? And now you're even, I love that you throw out like these big brand names that some people are like, oh my gosh, you were doing art for who, right? Like, but can you now tell us, how did you bridge that gap from there to now you have 3 kids, global brands, right? Like huge impact in what you're doing. Tell us about link that journey.
Yeah, so I guess I left off where I was just my freelance art career. And then when I had Rylee, in those next 2 years, it's like you get introduced to the whole baby world, which if you're not a mother, you're not introduced to, you don't know anything about it. So I was like, I was kind of shocked at how little the options were out there, like for just cute baby clothes. It was like everything was pink or blue with a butterfly or a truck. And I was like, there's got to be more, right? And so
no butterflies in trucks. Hashtag no more butterflies, no more trucks.
Which I've done both of those, but in my own way. Anyway.
But they're really cute. They're way cuter.
But so I felt like wow, like I have this background in, you know, product development and merchandising and knowing how to create a line and having connections in that world. And then I have this art side of me that I felt like kind of could lend itself to like the children's world, because it felt very young and whimsical and kind of innocent. And I just had this idea of, you know, maybe I could do something like that. And it started off as just kind of this experiment. I like put up a Shopify site and, you know, had 18 SKUs and like 2,400 pieces and put it out there and was just like, hey, social media, I made these pieces. Do you want to buy them? I started a brand. And they like, it was kind of this immediate, like, whoa, sold out within like 2 weeks. And we were like, huh, that like worked really well. And then from there, it kind of just, we did it again. It happened again. And then decided, I talked to my dad and I was like, hey, is this something that you would want to go in on me with? And so we ended up becoming business partners in the brand. He decided to leave his company and just be full-time with me because of seeing like the way that it was happening and growing. And so in 2016, this was 2014, so I just had my crew. So it was about 3 years before I started the brand after I had Rylee. I had my second son, Cru, and that's when we started the brand. And then for the next 2 years, we kind of did our own kind of just selling to direct consumers. And then at the same time had about 200 retail stores reach out to me, just being like, we would love to carry you. Went to our first trade show in 2016. And just from there, it kind of has just been snowballing into this crazy journey.
Oh my gosh, I have like goosebumps. I have like goosebumps, and here's why, is that I know that I don't know why this makes me so emotional, but even as I was thinking about truly, y'all, when I think about the most humble heart, it's Kelli. But Kelli, I just remember the nights and the days coming home years ago, and you were so faithful. And I'd walk into the apartment and you would just be drawing, and you would just be drawing. Like that's, and I kept thinking, like, does this girl have a life? Like, here I am getting into all sorts of trouble, doing things I shouldn't be doing, and she's just like drawing. And it's just such a testimony, because though this happens fast for you, like that timeline happened fast, what people forget is that you had years in little apartment drawing, like years before the Lord, of like still your big questions and asking God if he was going to do anything with your art. And so I just think that it's so powerful to like see those suddenly moments where all of us could go, oh, well, that's really nice for Kelli to be so successful overnight. But you're like, dude, you do what she did in the Fashion Institute years, and you go to those dark places. And we just forget that the in-between is that he was like preparing you along the way for that moment when all of a sudden, it was like your art takes off. But I just want to honor those early years, because I think that's such a testimony.
Yeah, and that's what I try and be really honest with people about too, is it was not it was not an overnight success. And in some ways it looks as though it was.
Yeah.
If when I'm just saying, we did it and it sold out, whatever. But like I had been working for 12 years prior to that point, and it's, not making much money, like working as a freelancer. Like it was like, and it's not like I had this idea that like one day, this is going to happen. It was super organic. And like, I think what's really cool for me to look back on now is like that I was creating and pursuing this path out of sheer joy and passion in like what I just really love to do. And organically, because I was open to sharing about it with other people and with, on my blog and on social media, and bringing people into that process, it happened because of that. Like it wasn't like this plan and then it happened and it was this crazy success. It was like years and years and years, like you said, of doing this, and then kind of clicking and coming together in like the perfect timing and the perfect product, and just so it wasn't, yeah.
I think
that's
that's so
really cool for me to look back on and see kind of the journey and how God had this in mind all along where I had no idea.
Yeah. I think that that speaks to the idea of conviction though, which is around like, I just can't not do it, you know, and when we really do, when it's not just about the dream, but it's about who God is and who he's created us to be, like we let go of the goal, we let go of the destination, we let go of that, like to your point of, even if now you and I think about this odd juxtaposition between at work, like here's the goal and here's our numbers and here's our revenue and here's that all these things, right? And then we have to come home and we need to be super present as mom and with our kids' needs. And like it can be this like such whiplash. But if we actually, and I'm saying this more to process like head to heart, if we actually go, I understand who I am because I know whose I am and I know what I'm here to do. Now, if I can lose myself to the joy of like just doing what he's asked me to do, it almost lets him do what he can only do. You know, like,
Yes.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's so weird because we live in a world that's screaming like, push harder, do more, one more post, make sure you know your plan, make sure you cross all your T's. Like, so I find myself, Kelli, how do you, and I'm in this moment right now as we're in this weird growth too, is like, I am like whiplashed between know your numbers and do the thing and make sure and push harder and one more rep and all these things. And then this like, do I just trust God and enjoy the journey? But what if I'm reckless? And what if I'm not taking responsibility? And like, how do do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to still keep doing the thing, right? Like you can't, especially when you have a business and employees and there's responsibility there and there always will be. I think it's just having the mindset of if this all went away tomorrow, what am I left with? And always remembering that like that's the people that I work with will be there. They'll be still there. But if the business, if something happens, who knows, So I always like to have that mentality because what I truly care about and what truly matters is, my family, the relationships that I have, my peace, and so the striving and the trying to, it's great to have goals. It's great to want to get somewhere. I think we were all created that way. Like we want to achieve, we want to be better, we want to have a successful business, and those are all good things. But I think when that becomes the ultimate goal and the ultimate focus, that's where it can get a little scary because that shouldn't be the ultimate focus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That's so good.
yeah.
So talk to us then around how did when the juggle, and it sounds like, right, it just continues to become realer and realer and right, your plate gets fuller and fuller, but now this thing starts to turn. I think you had us at 2016, you and your dad, now you're in trade shows, you've got all these retailers calling you. Will you keep going from there?
Yeah. And so, it was really just me, Sam and I just went to our first trade show and it was just him and I in a booth and my dad, it was just the three of us. And so from 2016 to 2018 is when we kind of just started getting a ton of wholesale, business. And so that was really where we started, was a wholesale business. We started direct to consumer, but then quickly our business model went to trying to get in a lot of wholesale doors. And so that's why you go to trade shows, you show your line, you pre-book your lines, and for the next season. And then we did that, up until, about 2018 is where people came to us and were like, hey, like we love your collection, but like you don't have enough baby basics. Like we want something like a little bit more simple for like our newborn baby customers. And so we were like, do we kind of create this subcategory into Rylee and Cru of more of a basics collection, or do we start it? I was pregnant with Quincy at the time. And I was like, well, Rylee and Cru is going so well. Why don't we just start another brand, sell it to our same, retailers and see if that works. And so we created then Quincy Mae in 2018, and that was really focused on baby. So Rylee and Cru is a full fashion collection. It goes up to 8 to 9 years old, or now 10 to 12. and then it doesn't focus on just those really simple newborn pieces. So then Quincy kind of solved that need for our retailers, and pretty much within the next year just doubled our business. And we were like, whoa, like that worked really well. Let's do it again. And so like 2 years later, then we did Noralee, and we started like a fancy dress, party dress collection, which, is more special occasion and a little bit more, special and vintage inspired. And still having somewhat of a small team. I think at that time in 2019, 2020, there was maybe 8 of us. And I mean, now there's 40. I mean, we have our own fulfillment center now. So that's, 20, we have a bigger staff in the warehouse, but I mean, there's, 18 of us now. But I kind of realized we started a brand called Play by Play, which is athleisure after that. But we realized with our current team, and honestly, the demand on the sheer amount of product I had to design, and I used to have breaks in my design calendar, and like there is no longer any breaks at all. It's just continuing to pump out stuff, all the time. And for our marketing people and all of that, it's just a constant need to like keep creating. And so the more brands we added, the more we were like, whoa, this is getting too much. So just this last year, we decided to bring that brand of athleisure under Rylee and Cru. But yeah, 3 brands is enough for us. We're probably done with 3, but it's been kind of a wild journey, and just seeing kind of, and it's always like, it's been such a learning journey too, of like what, my capacity is, what works, what doesn't, like, making mistakes and then shifting, and learning what our business is, what our customer likes and gravitates to. It's been such a, like, I think that's what's interesting, is like, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and stuck with just the idea of like, oh, it feels really overwhelming. It feels like really hard. But it's like, I think it's like one decision leads to another decision, leads to another decision. And it's like, if you just can keep putting that foot forward, that's what's been cool about our journey, is like, wasn't ever a major decision. It was like a little tiny thing in the beginning, which led to a little bigger thing, and it's like continuing to build off these stepping stones to create something bigger. It really wasn't one thing that led to it. So yeah, that, I don't know if you want me to speak more on any of the journey, but.
Well, I love that. I think that's incredible. So now will you speak to how, and maybe one of the best steps was the fact that, and if I know a little bit of the history, I know that your dad came on really more in the business lane, so it allowed you to stay in the creative lane. How have you guarded that? Or maybe you haven't. Maybe you can speak to that. It has been a struggle, or maybe it's because that was like this divine partnership. Or what I see a lot of times with business owners is, number one, they're wearing all the hats, right? For me, I also started as more of the controller in my business. And now that I'm becoming some of the creative space, which I love, right? Creating the content. But like it's so easy to get stuck in other lanes. And like, so how did you do that? How do you keep doing that? How do you protect your time? How do you trust other people to do their job? That's a big question.
I mean, that question has been the biggest challenge for me in the last 2 years, I would say, because we've grown so quickly, and I kind of in the beginning owned it all, and I was able to wear all the hats. But then as you grow, you realize you literally can't wear all the hats. Then you have to start hiring. And so now that we have quite a big team, I definitely have help, but it shifts your role into more of a management role, where you realize more of your time is spent kind of helping and making sure everyone else is doing their job and getting the approvals they need and the direction they need, than you are doing your job. And that is a big challenge, especially for me as a creative, because management is not my passion. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm gifted at it at all. And so And so that's been a really big challenge for me, which I'm actually still trying to figure out. I think what I've realized is that I think I've had to be okay with giving up some of the control. I'm a little bit of a like to have it all in my pocket and like to control it all. And realizing that in order to grow, I was capable of doing that when we were pretty small. But as we've grown, you literally have to release some of that control and trust other people and allow mistakes to happen and be okay with not everything being exactly to your vision. And so that's kind of where we are right now. I've never had to be involved in the business side. Thankfully, I have a partner in my dad who's incredible at business, who's great at, the whole production side, who's great at managing all the finances. I could never in a million years touch any of that and do what I do. And so I think having people who are creatives, who have a business, having that person or whoever it is hiring that person to do those things is like vital. Like if that's not your gifting, like don't waste your time doing that. I mean, you're not wasting it if you're having to do it, but it's not the best use of your time. And so we have a lot of areas in the business, like the web and the systems that we use and our, shipping systems and our warehouse. Like none of that I have to put any of my attention to because we have people that do that way better than I do. and have
praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Yeah. I'm literally, I know what I'm good at, and it's really the creative side. And so building a team around me to help me, fulfill all of that has been important. But then, like I said, the management piece is tricky because if you're the one that they're going to for approvals and questions and comments and all of that, it does get challenging. So we're kind of in that place right now where we're trying to figure that out. And I'm realizing I need to actually hire more designers to help me with my load because I do want to be that person that's kind of overseeing the vision of where it's going. So yeah, I don't necessarily have a perfect answer. It's gonna, I think there's been a challenge every step of the way, and trying to navigate that challenge and figure out the best direction to take has been just the last 10 years,
Totally. So what would you say to that woman who is kind of stuck in that in between, right? She hasn't quite yet hit that tipping point. We're going to speak to two different women, but this first one is a woman who is you at not 2016, right? Not that then that moment it was all of a sudden like, oh, the world just got better. But before you're like, this works. And she's gonna give up. What would you say to her?
I mean, really just, I actually think if you're burnt out and you're not in the space that you even want to do something anymore, that's okay. Focus on the things that do bring you joy. Find that thing. If it's one thing if you just don't want to do it anymore because you're just not finding the success. That's one thing. But it's another thing if you're not finding joy in that thing anymore. And so it's if I don't know, it's not it's more about you and what you want. And so it's if you're totally burnt out, then take a break, stop pursuing, stop striving. You don't have to do that. But I think if you have that within you where you believe in something and you have a dream and you want something, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it's not, our timeline is never it's never what we think. And that opportunity that might come up might not look how you think it might look. And so I think that's what's cool about my journey too, is that it's not actually what I expected. I didn't expect to be a leader of a company and to own a successful business. I actually thought I'd be a stay-at-home mom with a freelance design from my couch type of job. That was the idea. Like,
Yeah.
and that sounds like a little dream,
Yeah.
but that sounded good to me at the
Yeah.
time, you know, and that was going to be what it was, but it wasn't that. I just really loved creating, and I continued to put that out there and to showcase that and to keep doing that because I really loved it. So I think if you want to give up because you're not wanting to have, you know, that heartache, or you're not finding the success, then maybe shift your perspective and do it because it's what you love, and what brings you joy, and what fulfills you, rather than, you know, because I think there's a lot of people that they work a 9 to 5 that they might not love, but then they do that other thing, that and they volunteer, or they have, you know, open mic nights, and they sing, and like it's like they figure out what it is that like they are passionate about, and you can still do those things in your life. It doesn't have to be your vocation, if that makes sense.
So good. Well, Kelli, where can we find out more about you, your brands, all the things that you're doing?
So ryleeandcru.com is our website. We have that. We have quincymae.com. We have noralee.com.
You can
And
find her
then,
anywhere. Just Google all the things and you will
yeah,
find.
yeah. We have Instagrams for all of those. We're not great on TikTok yet. I'm not the social media expert, so don't follow me personally, because I don't share that much anymore.
You should, everybody. It's still wonderful. Well, Kelli, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being such a beacon of light. I think just to all of us women who are en route to our journey, we appreciate you today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Julia.
So on behalf of all of us dreamers, keep going. I think if you heard it once, you heard it a couple times today. One step in front of the other. Your dreams matter. Your creativity matters. And we hope, on behalf of me and Kelli, that you keep going and don't stop. Until next time.